Caleb.
What's up, guys? All right.
Average Joe Sports Talk Saturday morning recap show. Caleb Brooks, both Starkey and Corey LaBounty here with you to recap all the action from last night, Thursday night, and week 3 of the AHSAA season. And we've got some big scores and some surprising results to go over here on this Saturday morning. This show is brought to you by the Henry House. The Henry House is your premier destination for luxury vacation rentals in the heart of downtown Guntersville, Alabama. Our newly renovated historical home features 5 luxurious suites, each named after a different species of birds to give that southern flair. The ruffed grouse, blue heron, ruddy duck, Alabama yellowhammer, and the eagle's nest are sure to provide a unique and comfortable stay. We invite you to come experience the Henry House to see the transformation. So thank you to the Henry House for sponsoring us here with Average Joe Sports Talk, and another big Friday night in the books here with the AHSAA. Some huge results down there in Mobile that we'll get to, Corey. Some big games up in Northeast Alabama as well, Bo. I was at Saks last night and doing Dadeville and Saks, but kind of starting with you, Corey. Tell us about your game that you had last night there on the Mobile, schools TV network that you guys broadcast from every Friday night.
Well, you look at Viger and Williamson in a big-time 5A Region 1 matchup, and Viger was able to shut out the Williamson Lions 12-0. And when you look at the dominant performance defensively by the Viger Wolves, the same team that you look at 2020 that were 4A state champion, and their leading tackler at the time was a freshman, Brandon Boy. And this young man has continued over his career. Tiger continues to lead them in tackling, had a strip and score, took the ball away from Williamson in the red zone, went 98 yards to put 6 points on the board. That was the last score of the game. But Viger still undefeated and has some offensive struggles to work with and work on. But at the end of the day, no matter how ugly the win is, it's still a victory in region play. Another W in the win column for Marcus Cook.
Bo, did you go to a game before you guys had to do your show last night?
Yeah, I went to 3 games. Well, 3 games technically. I went to Gadsden City. That was a huge game. That turned out to be a shootout. Ollie Smith ended up pulling it out. There's 104 points scored in the game. It was tied. Well, actually, Fort Payne was up at one point, 44-41, and then Ollie Smith and Gadsden City just took control of the game. TJ Worthy had 5 touchdowns. Ollie Smith calls him the most underrated running back in the state. He'll be up for Player of the Week for us, along with Jacob Cornejo, who had 420 yards rushing last night for Cherokee County. And then a game that a lot of people thought was going to be really good, really close game was Nikita Stover and Decatur Heritage was visiting Coosa Christian, and they were undefeated. And that wasn't the case. Coosa Christian just flexed their muscle on them. I believe it's 48-0 shutout. Wow. It's just a different animal. The two teams, once they got on the field together, and 1A, I'm telling you, 1A North, this is going to be a very, very tough out. And then I finally ended up at Collinsville and Pisgah, which was a battle of undefeateds, top 10 matchup. Pisgah just took control of the game. I mean, it was they had 42 points, I think, on the board, and ended up with 66-13 final. And you remember they beat Aliceville last year, so people who don't think Pisgah's for real, they beat Aliceville and then ran into 5. I mean, how many times we've said that story? It sounds like we're a broken record. So it was having a good season, then they run into 5. But yeah, they look through it. You know, he's got a machine over there at Pisgah right now. But that's the 3 games I went to.
Awesome. Well, good deal. I had Daveland Sachs last night, and that game was really never close at any point, which was kind of surprising. It was homecoming for Sachs, and really wasn't a great showing there from them. I'm not sure what's going on with that football program right now, but it's definitely not the same program it was, a couple of years ago when they were right there in the mix competing with Fife and Piedmont and all them for a state championship. But
Caleb, they lost a quarterback. He's at Anniston now, and that really hurt them.
Yeah.
And
I'll tell you, they had a big old freshman playing quarterback last night, though, and he,
just the middle linebacker,
215, 220 pounds. It was...
That's Corey LaBounty size. Hey, Caleb, now I went to a game Thursday. If you want me to go ahead and talk about that one, get it out of the way.
Yeah, go ahead and talk about the game.
I went to Parker, Marmer, Jordan, and everybody thought that was going to be something special because the way they handled Gardendale. But Parker, man, Frank Warren, and let me tell you the scary part about this. They had, at last tally, 15 personal fouls, 4 of which was roughing the passer. So those were, and a lot of them was on third downs. So this score could have been even worse than what it ended up being. I mean, it was bad. And I'm going to tell you, Naheem Alford, who's the number 1 cornerback in the nation, he played excellent. He had a pick. He had a huge punt return. He's the number 1 corner, number 7 player in the nation for next year's class. Also, Jordan Crawford, who's 6'3", goes about 310 pounds. He's a 650 squat guy. I think he's got 50-something offers himself. He's an Alabama lean. Those 2 guys are incredible on their defense. They're 2 of the top in the nation. But then there's a guy on their offense that's really underrated that makes that Parker offense click, and his name's Malik Muhammad. And he's a big, rangy kid. He's about 6'3", 6'4". But, man, his top end speed, he's got to be low 4.4s or high 4.3s in the open field. He had several chunk 50-something yard touchdown runs. I mean, the dude's incredible. But that'll catch me up on all my live games. But
I had Jasper and Fairfield on Thursday night.
That was an incredible game to watch. I listened to you on TV when I got home.
Yeah, it ended up being a pretty good ball game, and Fairfield had to score with, I think, about 6 minutes to go in the game to take a lead after, they had taken a lead. Jasper had come back. I'll tell you this, both of those Jasper's going to be a team to watch next year. If Jasper can stay 5A, they're going to have everybody back. They've only got 9 seniors. They've got 20 sophomores. They were playing an 8th grader in their secondary. And Jasper will be a team to watch for next year. They have a sophomore running back who is very, very impressive the other night. And they have a junior defensive end who Odom was his last name. That kid has a chance to be a stud here in the state from a recruiting standpoint next year. So we'll get into our games now from Week 3 of the AHSAA schedule. You have Abbeville getting a big win over Geneva County, Aliceville over Francis Marion, a big win there for Aliceville. Andalusia just keeps rolling 50-0 over Bullitt County. Big win for Appalachian last night, Bo. They seem to have really kind of turned the corner as a football program. 35-22 over Woodville. But then talk about this game, Bo. Arab 29, Sardis 26, a tight contest. And Coach B.J. Brooks, he's got them rolling there at Sardis this year.
He does. A lot of people laughed when at me this week when I said Sardis is going to be in that game and it's going to be a fourth quarter game. They didn't believe me. This is not the same Sardis. And I told Ryan Morton, Eli's dad, that the really good tight end from Sardis that you met, I told his dad, I said, hey, you've already gotten your money out of B.J. Brooks simply for the fact that he has them believing that they can play with these teams. He ran down through the record between Guntersville, Boaz, Guntersville, Boaz, Arab, in the combined scores of the last 4 years or so, it was something like they've been outscored 400 and something to 30 in those games. That's how bad it had gotten at Sardis. And B.J. Brooks come in and changed that mindset instantly. So I said, just that alone, whether they win or lose this game, letting them know that they can compete and they do put on their helmets and shoulder pads the same way you do, you've earned your money with B.J. Brooks already. But, yeah, fantastic job last night from him. And they actually had the game won and lost late. It was bad. So, but, yeah, it was a really good game.
And I guess credit to Arab, they've won the last 2 weeks, but we're not used to seeing them have close games. And they've now had a close game with Douglas last week, a close game with Sardis. Do you think the rest of the region is just kind of catching up to them and just trying to get on that level?
Let me tell you this, Caleb. Next week, they better be ready because they're playing that juggernaut from Scottsboro, who's averaging 54 points a game from the flex spawn, or they're running the triple option like Corey LaBounty did on NCAA 95.
Yeah.
Well, we do a coach's show with Auburn each week. I had that up yesterday on our page. If you hadn't seen it, you can scroll down on the Average Joe's Facebook page and find that interview with Coach Keith Etheridge. He was a little worried going into this game with Jag. Jag used to be Jeff Davis High School there in Montgomery. It's now Jag High School. 46-0 last night for Auburn. Coach Etheridge has to be pleased with his group getting a comfortable win. They've dealt with a lot of adversity really since week 1. Everybody probably looks, if you haven't been keeping up with them, you go, well, they beat Hoover week 1, but since then they've lost their quarterback for possibly the whole entire year. They're having to kind of juggle some 10th graders. They've had to move Ian Nation there to quarterback and play him some there. And so for them to go and put up 46 points last night and pitch a shutout, very big there for that Auburn program. B.B. Comer, I'll actually have them and Vincent this week in a top 5 2-way matchup, which should be a lot of fun there on the AHSAA TV network game of the week. They just dominate Randburg last night, 42-7. So I'm looking forward to seeing B.B. Comer go against Vincent on Thursday night. And then, Corey, talk about this one. Back and forth contest here. Baker, 51. Foley, 44. You would look at it and say there wasn't a ton of defense being played, but you look at the type of players that were on the offenses for both of these teams, and there's a reason there was that many points put on the board last night.
Yeah, absolutely. You have Josh Flowers, the quarterback for Baker High School. He's a verbal commit to Mississippi State. He will enroll early. He's a caller, and he's throwing to a wide receiver by the name of Bryce Kane. And Bryce verbally committed to Auburn. You mentioned that top speed, Bo. Bryce Kane goes into Auburn's camp in summer and runs a 4.3, and he's only in his second football period. And with that tremendous blaze of speed, Josh Flowers has been able to utilize that and capitalize that. It was a huge win for the Baker Hornets and Steve Norman's program because even though they gave up over 275 yards rushing to the state's leading rusher, Colton Dero, this young man 1 week ago, he was pretty much bottled up against MGM as the Vikings were able to beat Foley. But you look at his ability, 275 yards, 4 touchdowns, just as steady as they come. Unfortunately, it was a loss for Derek Scott. Foley celebrating their 100th year of football, as evident as they painted that on the center field logo down there at Foley. But shootout in Foley and 7A Region 1, big time, undefeated now for the Baker Hornets.
Is losing that game, Corey, a little bit disappointing, I guess, for Foley. You get off to such a good start this year. You play really well against Prattville. Starting to get a lot of hype. Huge running back there. Perry Thompson at wide receiver. Now 2 weeks in a row that they fall. Is that kind of disappointing for that program?
Absolutely. You look at Derek Scott. They are the defending 7A Region 1 champion. And now you have back-to-back losses in one game in which your team just got pretty much whooped by MGM. And last night you had a chance to redeem yourself, couldn't get the stops and get off the field when you needed to. So I know Coach Scott, it's definitely disappointing for him. And on the back half of the season, he'll have to try to find a way to run the table and get a little help.
Corey, Bayside Academy 41, Wilcox Central 19. New coaching staff really there at Bayside Academy, with Coach Lazenby being gone now. And so tell me what you know about that program right now, where they're at as a group, and are they somebody that can go make some noise later on in the postseason?
One of the most surprising stories, a brand new coach, Barrett Trotter, former Auburn quarterback, takes over that program, and he's got a solid gunslinger himself, and Sam Dunn at quarterback, a young player for the Admirals. And you look at what they've just been able to accomplish week in and week out, and Bayside Academy is one of those programs that I think can definitely make some noise when playoff time comes around, and they've gotten off to a hot start, and they're fun to watch. I mean, just they've won games in overtime. They'll beat you in a shootout, but Coach Trotter, credit him in his first year, kind of inheriting the system, but the players are adjusting to his coaching style also.
Beauregard gets a big win over Tallahassee last night, 35-14. Always big for them in that region there. Moody falls to Bishop McNamara out of Maryland, and I'm almost positive that the coach up there at Bishop McNamara is from Alexander City. And coaches them, and that's why he made this trip to come down and play at Moody. But, a little bit bigger school. I got good football up there in that Maryland, Virginia area of the country. And so Moody falls 14-10 last night. And then, Bo, talk about this one. Boaz, they get a big win over Cleveland County, 35-21 last night.
Yeah, all eyes was on their defense after the Scottsboro game, and they gave up so many points. And I talked to Shay Monroe and Coach Sully, and they were just really upset by their performance. They really enjoyed the effort from the guys, but they wanted to see some more defensive stops, and they got enough stops last night. I know they still got some things they got to work through, but anytime you get a bounce back win after a loss like they suffered at Scottsboro, it's huge for your program, because that's what you want to see is after a loss. And we've already seen it this season. Corey talked about it last week. You don't want a loss to turn into another loss, and then another loss, and then your season's lost because of one single loss. So to get a bounce back win, that was huge for Coach Sully and them.
And Bo, Briarwood gets a win over Pelham last night, 28-21, and they've now bounced back. They've won 2 region games the last 2 weeks after a really tough start to the year for them, getting shut out by Clay Chalkful, and big bounce back win for Briarwood in that region there with Pelham, Benjamin Russell, Helena, Homewood, and you now got Briarwood, Benjamin Russell, and Helena sitting there at the top undefeated in that region.
And then, Briarwood, you rewind the clock 2 years ago, and they're playing Clay in the third round of the playoffs.
Yeah.
To see who plays Mountain Brook for the state championship. And then the next season they come in and you're thinking, this is their year. They had a quarterback back, Vizina, and then they thought, hey, this is their year. We're about to make it, and they get beat 48-0. You remember that last year to open the season to Clay, which Clay beats a lot of people like that. We'll get to that in a minute. But I mean, any win in that region, Caleb, you take it and you run. I don't care if it's by 1 point at the last second. You take it and you run, because that region, listen to the teams you just named. I mean, any win in that region is a good win. So this was a good win for them. Like you said, they kind of been a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde. They're good at times and then they go away. But all in all, that is one of the toughest regions in the state. We've talked about this from top to bottom. I mean, look at what happened to Helena last year.
Yeah.
They got left out of the playoffs. Yeah, I agree. You take that win and you build on it. That's all you can do at this point.
Looking at some of our other scores, Buckhorn with a win over Hazel Green last night. Hazel Green remains winless on the year. It's kind of crazy to think that they don't win much in football, but yet they're so successful in baseball, girls basketball, boys basketball, and other sports up there at Hazel Green, but just really can't seem to get it going. From a football standpoint, this one really surprised me last night, and both of you guys can talk about this one. Carroll of Ozark, 34, Charles Henderson, 24. Defending 5A state runner-ups. They fought at Carroll last night. And look, Carroll's one of those programs that you don't really ever know what you're getting year in and year out. They're going to be really good some years. There's going to be some years they're not as good. This may be a really good year for them, but really kind of surprising to see Charles Henderson fall last night by 10 points there to Carroll of Ozark.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what Bo just said, and I spoke on a couple of weeks ago. You look at MGM a couple of weeks ago going on the road and defeating Charles Henderson on the road. And what has happened since then, maybe some flaws were exposed, maybe some things or some injuries have occurred, but not too naturally do you see someone move up the polls and were number 2 ranked in 5A, suffer 2 losses like that early.
Yeah, I mean, rewind the clock last year, Caleb, when it's freezing cold and Auburn, Alabama, and we're sitting there watching him have a dogfight with Ramsey right before our eyes. And you fast forward to this, it's very shocking.
I thought this game would be a little bit closer last night, Bo, but Danny Horn just does what Danny Horn does, and they go down to Elmore County and win 48-6. I was impressed when I saw Elmore County against Sylacauga. They have really good quarterback. They've got 2 skill guys that will switch out between wide receiver and running back, and I thought they could give them some problems, but Coach Horn and his group with only a sophomore quarterback are rolling right now, 48-6 last night. They just dominated Kyle Caldwell and his group there at Elmore County.
Yeah, in Elmore County, I mean, they had some guys move in. This is supposed to be a really, really good year, and it still could be. The problem is, like you said, Danny Horn has gotten back to his roots, and until somebody can line up across the front and make things difficult for them and make them to where they're in some uncomfortable passing situations, you're going to see more of the same. The computers had this one as a 4-point game last night, and it turned out to be a 40-point game. So until somebody can line up and stop what they're doing in the wishbone and the power downhill running, because it don't matter who they're playing, they're going to play good defense. So that's not even a question.
Mm-hmm.
Defense travels, they're going to be in every game. But until somebody lines up across the front and stops what they're doing, running the ball downhill, you're going to see more of this.
Opelika beat Phoenix City a year ago, 17-14. This time they play Phoenix City very close, 28-18. Phoenix City able to get the win last night, but closest game they've played all year is Phoenix City had really kind of been rolling through their opponents. And, Opelika, they got to see Thompson week 1, and so maybe that's helped them a little bit. They've bounced back. They've won their next 2 games since then and then competed really well with Phoenix City last night. And, in a region like we talked about, Auburn's dealing with injuries, and Prattville doesn't seem to be as up as they've been in the past. And could be an opportunity for Opelika to sneak in there and get their first berth in the playoffs as a 7A program this year. I think that showed a lot last night. And then big win, Bo, last night for Coach Todd Cassidy and his group at Chelsea as they get the win over Oak Mountain last night, 21-13. And it's a step in the right direction for that program that could be dropping back down to 6A when we do reclassification this next time.
He's going to be watching that show on Pins and Needles, my friend. Yeah, because he's kind of looking forward to that since he's arrived there from J.B. Pennington. And you and I got to spend the night with him, hang out with him in Auburn. And what a great guy and a great win for him, man. Because winning solves a lot of problems, and a lot of naysayers always want to jump on the back and pile on people's losing. But when people get wins like this, they treasure them more, when they've been in a program that hasn't been coming out of the gate like Seabiscuit, so to speak. So absolutely, man. Shout out to him for that win. That was a gritty win and one very much needed one.
Looking at some more scores from around the state. Big win, Childersburg over Weaver last night. I thought Weaver would be able to get that win. But Childersburg ends up winning 42-29. Childersburg looks to be a little bit better this season in that region. But Cherokee County, Bo, they dominate Aniana last night, 49-21. You talked about it earlier. I mean, Jacob Cornejo, 400-plus rushing the ball.
Yeah. Coach Kelly actually texted me this morning, 420 to be exact, 2 touchdowns. And he's the best, I think. This is my opinion. I could be wrong. He might be the best football player in Northeast Alabama, Birmingham North this way. Many could argue, but you can't argue with the guy's stats. And playoffs alone last year, he had 1,500 yards and 18 touchdowns or 16 touchdowns in just the playoffs. I mean, the dude's incredible, and he's just growing and getting bigger and stronger. But what Coach Kelly and them's doing, and to see how this game was going to be Etowah. We'll talk about that in a minute. But this game and Aniana are measuring sticks in the region. And if you want to talk about flying colors, you just seen them talking about passing something in flying colors. You seen that last night. Yeah. They're the number 2 team in 4A for a reason. They're flexing their muscles at this time.
Corey, I asked you last week, hey, is Citronelle getting there? Are they, getting back to being able to compete? Overtime win over Alma Bryant last night, and they've played really well now to start this football season.
Yeah, I mean, Citronelle really had Viger on the ropes 1 week ago and let that one go in overtime. And now you look at another 7A Region 1 matchup to where they're able to find a way to win this one this week. And it just goes to show the growth of the program. And Coach Rao has done a phenomenal job there at Citronelle. The Wildcats, they were a program to where if you were able to win a game in the football season, the community was happy. But he's changing the culture to where not only are they competing in every single game, now they're winning their fair share as well. So congratulations. A lot of great things going on in Citronelle, Alabama.
And then Daphne, 56-14 over Davidson last night. Just a dominant win there for Daphne, Corey.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Kenny King and the guys finding a way to turn that knob back up. And I think that sometimes when you find your groove, maybe not in the first couple of weeks, you get a little better, and you keep chopping wood. That's exactly what Kenny King and the Trojans have been able to do. Now, again, you mentioned that reclassification. Daphne is a program that used to be a 6A program. They move up to 7A, and they really want to make the playoffs. So what better way to do that than to take care of one of your region opponents, and 1 week at a time for Kenny King, trying to get his program back into the playoffs.
Bo, you mentioned this game a little bit earlier, but just kind of talk a little bit more about Coosa Christian, Decatur Heritage. People can see 48-0 right there on the screen. What we thought this was going to be a tight ball game and a close ball game. What was the biggest difference between the two teams last night?
Line of scrimmage. Decatur Heritage was averaging 54 points a game coming in. They were held to 0. Their running back, I don't know his name. He's a freshman, but he's outstanding. He's about 6 foot, 205, super quick. He can move, really good football player. And they knew that's who they had circled. And when Teddy Whitmire and that Coosa Christian defense circles you, and you're a 1A team, I mean, when they're used to playing Handley and Pell City and Geraldine, and then they go play a 1A team, things tend to slow down a little bit. And that's no disrespect to Decatur Heritage. Look what Handley's doing. And Pell City's, look at their schedule. So, but yeah, no, when he circles you, look out. It's going to be tough. They dominated line of scrimmage. Then John David Justice was 14 of 18 last night with multiple touchdowns. And another one of the best overall football players in Northeast Alabama is Cleto Bryant. Undersized, not the fastest guy. Had 156 tackles last year. He had a punt return for a touchdown. He had about 20 tackles last night. He had another touchdown receiving, and he had about 3 or 4 KO shots where he sent people to the sidelines. And I'm not just saying it because he's coach's son. He's just an unbelievable football player.
A huge win there for Coosa Christian. You said it week 1. They lost to Geraldine. You said, look, this doesn't represent what Coosa Christian is. It represents what Geraldine is. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you look at what both those two teams have done since then. And then, one more score before we go over to our new scores here. Dothan 59, Prattville 24 last night. Just really kind of shocking to see Prattville get beat the way they've been beaten here earlier in this year. Foley getting them, and then now this one here with Dothan. And Dothan, I talked to Coach Etheridge. They beat Dothan in overtime last week. He said, look, Dothan's really good. They got some athletes, but just really surprising to see Prattville down as much as they are right now, losing about 35 points last night there to Dothan. So maybe they'll get things turned around there. You're just not used to seeing. I mean, who would have thought? Think about this, guys. Prattville and Hoover played each other for the first 7A state championship back in 2014, and look at where those two programs are right now. I mean, who would have thought that 10 years ago?
Yeah, Corey.
No,
Corey, you'll know this stat, Corey. I know they got the state record. How many weeks in a row was Hoover in the top 10? There's no way they're going to be in the new top 10, but it's a state record. I know that.
The run has been unbelievable. I mean, you look at it, probably 20 years. I mean,
Yeah.
20 plus. I mean, not weeks, but years.
Yep.
The run has been unbelievable for that Buccaneers program.
Yep.
So looking at some of our new scores here, Corey, talk about this one. Alberta 31, LaFleur 13 last night. Really good win there for Alberta.
Yeah, Nathan McDaniel gets his first win on the road at the Snake Pit down in Tomoville, Alabama, over Renardo Jackson and the LaFleur Rattlers. So congratulations to Coach Nathan. They're a program that, you look at their record and you want to overlook them or think that you're going to just go in and they're going to fold up for you. No, they're going to hit you in the mouth. They're going to keep coming. They have an outstanding coaching staff. That community down in Alberta is very passionate about their athletic program as a whole, and they've invested into that athletic program. So it was good to see them be able to get a win on the road last night.
Corey, tell me about this Faith Academy Ram team this year. 32-19 win over BC Rain last night. Is this another team that can go and compete for a championship there at 5A?
Yeah, absolutely. Coming off a semifinal appearance 1 year ago to where Charles Henderson did defeat them, and that just left a bitter taste in their mouth. Now, last week, you really got 5A heavyweights going at one another with Gulf Shores and Faith Academy, and Gulf Shores was able to pop Faith Academy in the mouth and really not necessarily knock them out, but definitely give them a reality check. And you look at Jack French, we call him just a wizard in what he's been able to achieve at all the different stops, whether it's Baldwin County, whether it's Baker, whether it's Faith Academy. Jack French has won. He's in the Mississippi Hall of Fame and is now coaching in the state of Alabama and has one of the most phenomenal two-way players that you'll see in the state of Alabama, Ty Goodwill, who is verbally committed to Louisiana Lafayette. And if you haven't had a chance to pop in Ty Goodwill's film, he's one of those, what Steve Mass calls 4 clippers. You see 4 clips of him on huddle, and that's all you need to see to know that this kid is a Power 5 kid. Nothing wrong with being verbally committed to Louisiana Lafayette at this point in time, but the Faith Academy Rams, huge win, region win over the BC Rain Red Raiders, and Ty Goodwill is one of those reasons that Faith Academy continues to get better.
Bo, we bragged a lot about Etowah last week and how they handled a kind of crazy circumstance and getting a dominant win over Asheville, but it all kind of came crashing down this week with Fultondale just really taking it to them 48-9. And then I saw last night that maybe Jamison Sissom now dealing with an injury at quarterback there for Etowah as well.
Well, you mentioned it, dude. If they would have played Cherokee County and the way they were rolling and you've seen this score, I'd be like, man, I still know Etowah is better than that score if they had to play Cherokee County and seen this score. But the fact that they played Fultondale and this score come about, something is bad wrong. Now, I know Coach Glover's not there right now. Coach Ball's taking over on an interim basis, but I grew up in Attala with Cadillac, and we grew up in Bradley Park there, and you've been there with me several times and passed by it, Caleb, on our way to Etowah. Never seen anything like this. And I mean, this is back my earliest memories of being a human, watching football. I've never seen anything like this out of Attala. Never. To a team like Fulton, and I'm not disrespecting Fultondale, but the proof's in the pudding. They have just not got it done over there the last several years, and to go in there and win in that fashion, it's just it hurts my heart a little bit as a Blue Devil, to see that happen to them. It just, because I know a lot of good kids and there's some good players over there. It's just something else going on. It's something internal. I don't know what it is. I'm not speculating. I love Jeff Cogrove, superintendent. I love everybody in Attala, but I mean, on paper, it is what it is.
I feel really bad for Whitesburg Christian and North Sand Mountain the last 2 weeks because they had to take on Fife after Fife took a loss to start the season. And Fife has made them two teams pay for it now. They've won the last 2 weeks. I think it's like 105-0. I think
Yep.
won it 51-0 last week, I think, over North Sand
I
Mountain.
think it's
something right
54
along
and
in there.
53 is 107 points.
And so then 54-0 over Whitesburg Christian last night. And do you think this is Fife kind of sending a message to the rest of 2A of, hey, look, we lost week 1. It was to a 3A team, and we're still the team to beat here in 2A.
Yeah, I've talked to Coach Benefield twice this week, actually, and it seems to be in really good spirits. He knew going into the Geraldine game he's up against it, and they were senior loaded, and Coach Benefield has got a very young team on his standards. Returned one guy out of his 7 off his – I call his 7 his offensive line because they're always in too tight. So he returned Tucker Wilkes. So everybody knew starting up front, and that goes for both sides of the ball. So he knew he was up against it a little bit, and he knew he had some young guys. But it's a case of they're not playing Geraldine this week. The schedule eases up a little bit, and then some of these younger guys is starting to click with them. So, yeah, I think it is sending a message because who's looming right down the pipelines, Pisgah, and that's going to be an absolute war.
There's part of me that thinks Coach Benefield, look, you'll never hear Benefield and Coach Horn say that they are happy that they lost a game or anything like that, but there's part of me that thinks he's not too upset with the fact that they lost a game early in the season and his group got to be kind of humbled early in the year and not something that they had to deal with later on in the year as well.
That's
Speaking
correct.
of Geraldine, you talked about Gadsden City and Fort Payne before we get to Geraldine. Talk about that game a little bit more, Bo. 104 points total last night. It was 44-41 at one point before Gadsden City really pulled away late in that ball game. But what did Coach Ali Smith group really show you in the way that they were able to finish that game and pull away from Fort Payne and finally find a way to get some stops there late in that ball game?
Well, the first thing they showed me is that they can score points. This is the first time they've all been healthy. And you have the emergence of Starks at receiver, and you have emergence of Sparks at receiver, and the emergence of Andy Swafford's son at receiver. And now they got TJ Worthy running at 5-touchdown clip out of the backfield, who, like I said, Ali said he's one of the most underrated backs in the state. But then it also shows me that Luke's healthy. Luke Waldrop, their quarterback, is a phenomenal quarterback, a little undersized, got arm speed, got legs. But when he's healthy and he can move around, he can make plays, he can extend the pocket, let guys get open, and scoring plays and scoring points on an opponent that's not worthy is something. But when you do it in a game like this, when the other team's averaging 50-something points a game, like Fort Payne was, and Dax Vanderdorn was leading the state in passing, I don't know what it is now, but you got to score, and they did. I mean, this game had I think it's 44-41 at the end of the third. So, yeah, you have to score and a grit. Show me grit, too. So, from both teams, really, for Fort Payne to go in there and perform, because they have not performed good against Gadsden City as of late. Matter of fact, last year they got beat 18-0. So, there's a few more points scored than 18 this season combined.
Yeah, they made up for their lack of points last night. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
This one surprised me a little bit, Bo. And it's not that Hope's Bluff isn't good. It's the fact that Geraldine have been rolling through people so far, but 17-7 last night. And, you have to feel like the game went exactly how Hope's Bluff drew it up. Try to muck it up and, let the clock run and just not have a lot of wide openness in the ball game. But Geraldine able to pull it out and still win 17-7 last night.
Well, one thing Hope's Bluff does have is a big, strong, physical offensive line. I don't know what they average up front, maybe 280, something like that, 290. That's pretty big in 3A football. And they do run the ball, and they run the clock down. And like you said, they muck it up, muddy it up, and they do every bit of that. So, and for whatever reason, defensively, they didn't let these guys get in a groove. So Carlos Mann and Jackson Cobbin and company couldn't get in a groove last night. They had spurt plays, but then Hope's Bluff would get the ball, and then they would run the ball, run the clock, and slow it down. And a team like Geraldine's a rhythm team, and when they get in a rhythm, they're very, very hard to stop. But one key opponent, though, you got to look back. I believe Fife only held them to like 150 yards total.
Mm-hmm.
So they defended them well. So when you put out a tape like that, if you can mimic what they do and do your part, and then you can run the ball and have some success, you're going to have some success against them.
Corey, you don't see Terry Curtis get shut out very often. And Gulf Shores was able to do that last night, 17-0 over UMS Wright. Tell me a little bit about that ball game and what's going on at UMS. Is it the fact that they're having to play 5A football right now and they're really a 4A school? Is there not as good of players there? I mean, they just don't seem to be as up as we've seen them, especially when they were on that run of making the state championship so consistently.
They have to do everything perfect, Caleb, because they don't have any guys like a Cole Blaylock that are Power 5 guys or guys that are going to be recruited to go to that next level. They're just a school that plays together from kindergarten all the way through their senior year. There are no transfer portal kids coming into the school. Everything is homegrown, has come to the program, through the program, and been playing football since 5 or 6 years old. And to shut out Terry Curtis, you definitely don't see that very often. So Gulf Shores said they want to be the new standard bearer. They want to be the new torch bearer in 5A 1. And I do expect Gulf Shores to win that region. They are favored to win that region for a reason. But Terry Curtis, we talked to little Danny Horn and earlier, when you have two GOATs like that are battling one another for the state's all-time winningest coaching record, I think that when you look at it, with a couple more losses and a couple more Danny Horn wins, you could actually see that Danny Horn surpassed Terry Curtis. And that's something that Terry Curtis had that award given to him and earned last year. And now, because the UMS Wright Bulldogs, not necessarily not talented, but are on the roster facing better opponents this year than they did a year ago, it's going to make a difference. And UMS Wright, they're that team that everything has to be done perfectly. From being coached up, the execution has to be perfect. If it's not perfect, then that's when they're going to struggle, because there is no elite athlete out there on both sides of the football for Terry Curtis.
Yeah, just really surprising to see them down like that. Bo, we saw Douglas compete really well with ARAB last week, and we talked to Guntersville during the week this week, and they just dominated Douglas last night, 56-14 on homecoming night, and I mean that was a statement win in my opinion there for Guntersville.
Southside went there and competed with them week 0 like they did, and holding them to 14 points was special. This was a bit of a shocker because Douglas had gotten better, but they did get the running back, Caleb's first game he's played. So we knew that was going to be definitely a difference maker for him, and it was. I don't know what he ended up with, but we knew this was coming. They was weathering the storm, getting everybody healthy. And when they got everybody healthy, you talk to Coach Reese, this Guntersville team's dangerous and have been for the last few years, and 5A North, period, across the board. So I was shocked, but I wasn't too shocked, because once they get all of their guys healthy and start rolling, this is going to be a different Guntersville team than what we've seen in week 0.
Hanley, who you could argue is right there as one of the favorites to play for the 4A state championship. They go just take care of business against White Plains, 41-0, kind of doing what they needed to do there in that ball game. Helena with a win over Chilton County last night, 37-10. Coach Richie Busby and his group stay undefeated, continue to roll. They, to me right now, look to be the favorites in that region. We talked about how tough that region is, and they seem to be a team on a mission. You talked about earlier, they lost their last 2 region games, which kept them from making the postseason last year. One of them was a big upset to Calera. They seem to be a group that has a lot of motivation going into this year. And then Tuscaloosa County was dealing with a lot of different distractions during the week this week due to all the news that came out, and it showed during the game last night. Hewitt-Trussville beats them 42-7. I think, Hewitt, it's really going to come down, it's crazy to think about unless Hoover really turns it around. It's going to come down to Hewitt and Vestavia later on who's going to be that 2 seed, who's going to be that 3 seed in that region. This is the best chance Hewitt's had in a long time to get that 2 seed and have some home playoff, more than just one home playoff game, on their schedule. So, which really for them, they hadn't got to play many home playoff games at all because they go on the road in that first round. Then they match back up with someone from their region who's a higher seed. So they hadn't gotten to play many home games at all there at Hewitt-Trussville. It'd be huge for them to get that 2 seed this year and have that opportunity to be at home for a couple of games. And Highland Home really put it on Lynette last night, 40-14. You know, I know they've got some Power 5 guys there at Highland Home who could really make some noise. This one here really surprised me as well. Hillcrest Tuscaloosa 35, Hueytown 6 last night. Just not used to seeing Hueytown get beat in that manner, and they were dominated last night. And then Homewood 43-21 over Calera. You know, Calera was beat by 50 by Benjamin Russell last week, so a good answer by them to kind of come back and compete with, you know, a really good Homewood team and give themselves a chance. That game was closer until, you know, the back part of that ball game last night. So we'll continue looking at some of our scores here from around the state. Right here on the Average Joe Sports Talk Saturday morning recap show, brought to you by the Henry House up there in Guntersville. Make sure to check out the Henry House in Guntersville. If you're doing any vacationing, look, if you hadn't visited Guntersville, when you think of vacations in the States, you may think of, you know, Mobile and going to Gulf Shores to the beach or going down to Florida or anything. Look to Guntersville and go visit the lake up in Guntersville. I'm telling you, that's a great place, and I think it's one of the most underrated cities that we have in our whole entire state, and the Henry House can help get you set up there with your vacation stay. So looking through some of these other scores, Bo, Jacksonville just dominated Anniston last night, 52-24 after a really close game last season. This one had to surprise you because it really surprised me last night.
It did. Sat in with Coach Rico Jackson this week, talked with him. He thought they had a really good shot, really good game plan. He did watch the Hanley tape, and he thought, you know, that game was close for a reason. He thought Jacksonville was a good football team, and they proved to be. Hanley's just on a mission. So that's not a bad loss for Jacksonville and Clint Smith. Jim Ogles was playing at an unconscious level, but he did tell me if we don't execute, they can beat us. And that looks like what the case was last night. Anniston is in a unique situation because they've been dominant the last few years. Now they're kind of the hunted, so to speak, and got two losses here early, so it's going to be interesting to see how they bounce back.
No doubt about it. You know, here's a program I want to talk a little bit about. John Carroll, 44-6 over Hayden last night. They stay undefeated on the season, and they're rolling. I mean, this is a program that had not won a lot of football games over the last 10 years, and Coach Will Mara has come in. My cousins went to John Carroll, so I've gotten to kind of see this program a little bit, and he coached these guys in middle school that he's coaching now, and they were really good when they were in middle school. And so they ended up hiring him as a varsity coach. Now all these kids he was coaching at middle school have now gotten up to the varsity level. And it's showing this year. They're in a tough region there. I mean, Pleasant Grove, Ramsey, Winona. We saw Fairfield and Jasper the other night. And tough region there, and they're right there in the mix, being able to compete. And so we'll find out a little bit more about them when they run into the Ramseys, the Pleasant Groves, and the Winonas on down the line. But they're taking care of business here early in this season. And then Corey, Leroy 48, Choctaw County 6 last night. I mean, does Leroy have another group that is going to be competing right there in that classification?
Absolutely. Leroy, the Golden Bears, anytime you go up 43 in the atmosphere that they create for that football program, you know you have an opportunity to compete each every year. So Leroy, absolutely, Caleb. We have an opportunity to see them make a tremendously deep run in the playoffs and possibly make that Super 7 appearance once again.
Just going through some more scores. Big win for Lincoln last night, Bo. 24-17 over Alexandria. And Todd Ginn and his group at Alexandria just continue to struggle here during this year.
Got guys leaving the team. Got some guys banged up. It's a really, really unique situation at Alexandria. I've never seen this from Alexandria. Strange times we live in, man. You see a Ginn on the sideline, well, multiple Ginns. There's like, I don't know, 4 Ginns on the sidelines over there now. Weird. I mean, come out of nowhere. I mean, you knew Ronnie Royal transferring out was a huge, huge loss. Then you knew Jabez McGee graduating was a loss, and Antonio Ross leaving was a loss. But hey, I'd have never imagined this. I'd have never in a million years would imagine what we're seeing from them, man.
Corey, Mary Montgomery, they just continue rolling. Big win over Fairhope last night, 24-10.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care how you spell EM backwards, you're still going to come out with the same result. And so far through the first 4 games, you've seen the same result out of their head coach, Zach Golson. And he continues to get it done. And let me share something with you guys. I mean, this is a program that for only the second time in program history gets off to like a 4-0 start. have never been ranked this high in the polls in the history of them joining the 7A classification. Anytime you say and see MGM ahead of Hoover in the 7A polls, it's time to rejoice in Sims, Alabama, because it's something that you just never expect. And credit to Hoover and their standard, because anytime you look at 23, 24 consecutive years being ranked in the top 10 of polls, that's consistency at its finest, and they laid the blueprint. But MGM, you have a tremendous quarterback verbally committed to South Alabama, Jared Hollins. You have running backs. You really have everything that you need. Alex Page runs that defense for Zach Golson, and they're just a great staff, a great community. But MGM's going to continue to make noise and continue to make history. And like I say, this time 1 year ago, this same program by the head coach in his first year at MGM was 0-4. Started the season 0-4. And now they have turned the tide and reversed the fortunes. It's one of the best stories in the state of Alabama from turning your program around.
Corey, it really seems like McGill has found some offense now. They struggled scoring the football early in the season, 59-0 over Robertsdale last night. What have they really figured out on that offensive side of the football?
Execution and knocking off the penalties. And David Faulkner, you know this guy can coach. And it's just a matter now of the executing by the Yellow Jackets, the belief by the Yellow Jackets. But it's amazing what a solid shutout would do for your team. And behind that shutout and explosive offensive performance, it just gives you a little bit more juice going into practices, going into film rooms. You pay a lot more attention when instead of losing, 27-12 or getting beat, boat race by 4 or 5 scores. When you're able to have an explosive offense and get that shutout, all attention is laser sharp and focused for McGill-Tulane now.
So looking at some more scores, Montgomery Catholic goes down to Slocum. They win 42-0. I saw Caleb McCreary became only the 11th player in AHSAA history with 10,000 career yards. It's a kid that's been playing since his freshman year when Coach Aubrey Blackwell was at Montgomery Catholic.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to him. That guy is phenomenal. I mean, if there's ever been a PlayStation player, it's that guy. He's everywhere and nowhere all at the same time. He's phenomenal. Left-handed kid, can spin it, can throw from any angle, can throw on the run, can throw in the pocket. I've been sitting in Juice's office in Clemson, be there. I've been there when Miami's there. I've been there when Florida's there. That's the type of guys that's coming after this kid. I mean, he's just a phenomenal kid and a great student of the game. He really does well in film study, and they got the athletes at Catholic, and by George, he gets them the ball.
North Sand Mountain 36, Eider 0 last night. Big bounce back win there from North Sand Mountain.
Yeah, you get beat by 50-something-0, and you want to take it out on somebody else. Unfortunately, it's Coach Grant and Eider, and Coach Grant's a good friend of mine. But yeah, North Sand's a tough physical team, and Eider's a little undermanned this year. I think they only got 20-something kids total. So you play an Ironman football and you were to get tired or something, you turn it over here or there, get a couple of bad penalties, and these kind of things can happen real quick in those games.
Oxford 52, Huffman 0. Not much to talk about with that game there. You can talk a little bit about what Oxford did, but Huffman is kind of sad to see where they're at right now. I think they've been outscored. It's like 215-0 now through the first 4 weeks of the season.
Yeah, Corey, listen to this. I was doing Sam Adams' show this week and was sitting in his office, and we looked at that stat, and I was like, Coach, what do you think? He's like, well, it's unbelievable. He said, I'd have never thought it. But yeah, now after this game, and I know Sam's not the type of guy that ran it up on him, so I'm sure that score was out of hand early, and he probably had his guy sitting on the bench resting up because they got some big games coming down the road. But I hate that for Huffman. That's tough. You flip it over to basketball, and they'll beat you like that in basketball. What you need, with Coach Ward and company.
Yeah. Now, Coach Ward's over there licking his chops, just saying, "Hey, we'll get you guys on the court."
Get 2 more weeks, and balls will start bouncing.
Hey, Rush Probst, big win last night, 24-16 over Center Point. He's done a really good job there. I mean, you can say what you want about him, and people have their certain feelings about him, all that type of stuff. No matter how you feel about him, you have to respect the job that he's done at Pell City this year. Outside of one game, which was against the best team in the North in 6A for sure, in Clay Chalkville, they've been in every ball game, and then they found a way to win last night against a really good Center Point team.
Yeah, that's the proverbial monkey off the back to get that first win there, and a program that Steve Mask, pretty much he was out on that one. Was it week one? I mean, they ended up with one win, and then the next 9 weeks was 50 something to nothings, 40 something to nothings, and I don't know, man. There's a lot of things changing. I think Corey LaBounty said this too a few weeks ago. If you're gonna get Mr. Probst, you better get him now, because things are going to change at a rapid pace over there in Pell City, Alabama. And this is the first brick into the mortar to get that thing started, in my opinion.
Bo, talk about this one. Piedmont, Jonathan Miller gets his first win at Piedmont last night, 24-13 over Dale Pruitt there in Plainview.
Had to get that win because, when's the last time you seen Piedmont 0-2? Name me that. And then let me go one up you on that one. Staring down the barrel of another loss. They were at a very tough Plainview team that runs a triple option. And that game was close. And, I listened to it on the radio on my way up to the station. And I know Riley Pinto ran a 40-something yard touchdown that kind of broke that back out to a double-digit lead. And then they ultimately hung on. That number one, Miller had to have that win, And anytime you're coaching against a Hall of Fame guy, like a 300-win guy like Dale Pruitt, you're going to be up against it a little bit. So, and you got a former Alabama defensive coordinator on your staff helping you call defenses. That kind of helps you a little bit, I'd imagine. Jeremy Pruitt. So yeah, I thought it was an impressive win for him to go on the road and beat those guys for sure.
Granger shook and Pike Road. They dominate Sidney Lanier last night, 52-33. They're trying to kind of get things back going there at Pike Road, place that we saw win a state championship just a couple of years ago, and now they've moved up to 6A and kind of struggled a little bit more. But, Bo, this one here surprised me big time. Not the fact of who won the game, but 66-13. That score was really surprising to me. And speaking of the Pruitts, Luke Pruitt has got it going on at Pisgah right now. They're playing really well, and they seem to be a hungry group that probably has a certain team and certain game circled on their schedule.
Okay, Caleb, I walked in the stadium with a minute to go in the first, and it was a 30-something-7 game. So, yeah, let me just tell you this real quick. I'll get in and out on this game. I know we're up against the time-wise, but they're so young. Collins was so young. They're starting ninth graders across the board, eighth graders. If that group stays together, they're going to be just like Pruitt and his group is right now, because Pruitt took these same bumps and bruises 3 years ago. Now he's giving them out because those guys grew up. The same thing's happening at Collinsville. They're just not there yet. You could just see it physically. They're just not there yet. They're not on that level, on that stage. And Pisgah, senior laden, a couple of juniors, but yeah, same thing's happening. They're just a few years behind the 8 ball right now.
Ramsey 49, Pleasant Grove 17. Not shocked at who won the game, but shocked at the result. You don't see Pleasant Grove get beat like that very often.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. How big was the win for Frank Warren to beat Ramsey earlier this year in the city? In that city, it means something to win these games, regardless of classification. I was shocked. I mean, I am shocked. I don't know what to say. I really don't. I know one thing. Coach Jackson and Ramsey's for real.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you right now, they're going to be a very tough out in 5A. You can go ahead and write that down. They're just a good football team. I mean, Parker jumped up on them too, and they came back and gave Parker Frank Warren a near heart attack in Legion Field, the game we were at, hanging on to win that game. So yeah, Coach Jackson's got it going on there, especially with the circumstances. We don't have to beat the dead horse and talk about that, but you've seen the weight room and things that they have to suffer through over there.
Yeah. So and hey, Ramsey's going to play Auburn here in a couple of weeks, so that one could be a fun matchup at Legion Field as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that one goes. Reeltown, they keep rolling. They beat Goshen last night, 43-25. Reeltown looks to be a team that can also make a lot of noise there at 2A there in the South. Big win for Sandrock last night, Bo, over Section 14-7. They needed that. And then Corey, I saw a lot of people on social media talking maybe the most embarrassing loss for Spanish Fort in their program's history, and Saraland just went in and put it on them last night.
Saraland's a juggernaut. I mean, buzzsaw, call it what you want. The best team in the state of Alabama resides right there with Jeff Kelly and Saraland. And they were just angry that they gave up the 7 points, because what they're trying to do, guys, is become the most dominant team in the state of Alabama's history since that 87-88 Viger team that is proclaimed as the state's greatest team ever in the history of the state. They want to be on that level. And look, they're so good. Spanish Fort just had no answer.
Yeah, that one just it shot. I thought we'd see a little bit closer game last night with those two teams, and then Orange Beach really struggling right now. Corey, they lose to Satsuma last night, 17-15. Just really kind of can't seem to figure it out. You know, here early in the season there at Orange Beach.
Can't get over that hump, and that's the biggest thing. Those close games, you're used to them winning, and I know that it's something that will be changed here moving forward, because like I say, you lose and you learn. And I think the Dolphins are taking those lessons and learning from them now. Whether it's going to benefit them this season, I don't know, but I guarantee they're taking those lessons and will apply them moving forward.
Bo, Southside Gadsden 35-21 over Springville last night, and their loss to Guntersville just continues to look better and better each week because of how Guntersville has played. And I think that the way Southside Gadsden has played since that game also tells you a lot about their team, what Coach Miles Holcomb has there.
Yeah, they're playing together as a team. With Gage not in there, now they're having to pay attention to the little details, making sure all T's are crossed and all I's are dotted, especially on the offensive line. Still got Mason Teague, still got playmakers on the edge, and Moats and McMichaels. The thing that's going to hinge on them defensively, you know, they've been scrappy. They're scrappy that first week with Coach Justin Bowen. Titan Ricks leads that defense. They got to continue to play really good defense, continue to run the ball like they have been, and they're going to be in every game the rest of the year.
And then, you know, you mentioned this real quick, Bo. I mean, Spring Garden 41, Victory Christian 7. Spring Garden needed a win last night.
Oh, needed it more than anything you can imagine after the last 2 weeks and double-digit losses to Coosa Christian, and then a bad loss to Wadley on the road to flip that score around. They lost by this margin to Wadley last week. So
yeah.
I ain't going to say it's a must-win, but it's a much-needed win. I'll say that.
No doubt about it. Looking at some of these other scores, you know, big win for St. Luke's last night, Corey, over Washington County, 27-14. St. Michael with a win over Escambia County, 41-26. I think you kind of talked about St. Michael's. They're a young group that may have a chance to really make some noise here in a couple of years.
Yeah, future NFL Hall of Famer Phillip Rivers, of course, the head coach down at St. Michael's. His son is a freshman as a quarterback. Gunner really developing, and what better quarterback coach to develop than your own dad, who, again, talk of him coming back and playing for the Jets or whomever in the NFL. No, it's not going to. St. Michael is his focus. They are going to continue to get better. They just have to find a way to win the right games within their region so they can make the playoffs.
Bo, Sylvania just put it on Ohatchee last night, 30-point win, 64-34, and you know, they just continue to show that they're one of the teams you have to watch out for in 3A, especially up in the north.
Yeah, interesting fact, it was 24-22 at halftime. Coach Van said that they were getting penalized and a lot of penalties every time they'd break off a big run, and it was really frustrating to them. So what do? He makes some adjustments. They go out in the second half, and they outscore them by 40 at the Creek Bank. You know, Coach Finley had this team undefeated, Ohatchee, and rolling, and actually took the lead in this game right before half, and then they came back and took it back right before they went into the half room, that being Sylvania. But Coach Tyler Van, my friend, Caleb, Corey, listen to me, my brother. Geraldine and Sylvania next week.
Yeah, that might be our game of the week on Road to the Blue Map. Just might be, you know. Just might be. So that one should be a fun one. Corey, Theodore gets a much-needed win over Baldwin County last night in overtime, 27-24.
Yeah, that was a big win for Steve Mask. You look at the opportunity now Theodore will take on Spanish Fort. We'll have that game on the MCPSS television network that Al Wheaton and I will be doing next week. So big win for the Bobcats.
Thompson 55, Spain Park 14. Honestly thought this would be a closer ball game. Thompson's offense really had not been clicking here early in the season. Vestavia was able to defend them very well. Seems like Trent Seaborn and company kind of got things going last night, though, with 55 points on the board. And Coach Mark Freeman and his group kind of flexed their muscles and say, hey, yeah, we're still that team up here in 7A that all you guys are trying to chase and go after here. Bo, we called this last year. We thought that this would have happened a year ago. It took 1 year extra, but Vestavia 26, Hoover 7 last night. Huge win for Robert Evans and his group. And we've talked about it a little bit throughout this broadcast, but Hoover now at 1-3. And if you look at their schedule, they got Hewitt coming up and Mountain Brook in a non-region game after that. I mean, there's a very, very realistic chance that they're 1-5 6 weeks into the season.
Well, you know, one thing Robert Evans don't like Hoover. He made no mistake about that. Remember his comments last year that the Hoover Met has no mystique about it no more. It's just another place to play a football game. He took some heat for that, but he don't make. I like people that do that, like what Deion Sanders is doing. Mm-hmm. You know, he don't agree with the mask. He banned mask mandates. He said nobody's wearing a mask in my. I love it. You know, so don't walk away from it and be about it. If you're gonna talk it, be it, and that's what Deion's doing, and that's what I loved about what he's doing up there. It's just phenomenal to me to see what he's doing at Vestavia Hills, dude. It's incredible what he's doing, and Hoover. I'm sorry, man. It looks like it's over with.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say that, and it's weird to say that, but it looks like it's over with the dynasty. Now, can they figure it out, turn it around? I mean, these two next opponents are very, very losable games for them.
Corey, you talked a little bit about this in the opener, but just talk about how big this win was for Viger last night, 12-0 over Williamson.
You go undefeated in region play. You go undefeated on your regular season record. Moving forward, you have Viger and UMS Wright next week. So that's a game to where we talked earlier about Terry Curtis. I know Marcus Cook and them lost a heartbreaker at UMS a year ago. This one's going to be in Pritchard. So you can look for Viger to give UMS all they can handle next week.
Yeah, that one should be a fun one. Looking forward to that one. And then here's our final scores wrapping things up. Bo, I'll have Walter Welborn and Dadeville this next week. They dominate Beulah last night, 60-34. A Beulah team who had beaten Sachs the week before. So I'm really looking forward to that ball game next week and seeing how Welborn kind of handles that bus ride down to Dadeville. It'll be about an hour, 45-minute trip for them. And if they can come out and come compete physically with Dadeville, it should be a really good football game next week between those two teams. Winona, they keep rolling up here in the Birmingham area. Right now, their only loss on the season is 35-21 to Pleasant Grove. And so, really looking forward to seeing how a lot of this kind of, shapes itself out. And then, Bo, right here to end things off, just talk about Westbrook Christian and what Steve Smith's doing there. 56-34 over Glencoe last night.
Went to the game. It was it was an interesting game last night because tell of two different teams at two different times. But we also had the Blanchard Bowl. Tara Dawn's my co-host on the final drive. Mm-hmm. Her dad's Coach Blanchard from Piedmont. She's won all the state championship rings, the defensive coordinator, and her brother's on the Glencoe staff, second leading receiver in West Alabama history. So, yeah, that was interesting. And a lot of people don't know this going in. I do believe Scott Martin had won 2 in a row versus Steve Smith when he was the coach at Ohatchee. Before these two hooked back up. So that's an interesting fact in that game. But Steve Smith at home, the new renovations, much like Rush Probst, if you're going to get them, you better get them early because come see me in 3 years, it's not even going to look like the same place.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing how all of that develops there. So another great show here for us with Average Joe's Sports Talk and our Saturday morning recap show. A lot of great scores from all around the state and obviously enjoy being with you two guys and recapping all this and getting to talk about everything. So, Corey, looks like Bo's already gotten out on us. He's ready to go watch some college football. So we're going to go do the same here today. And, it's been fun recapping all these games for you guys, getting to talk about all this each week. And it's crazy to think we're halfway through the high school season once next week gets done. So, But for both Starkey, Corey LaBounty, I'm Caleb Brooks. We'll be back next Saturday, 9:30, right here to recap all the action again from week 4 of the AHSAA season. And make sure to tune in Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. We'll be live with Road to the Blue Map. Myself and Bo and Reggie Davis will break down all the games coming up for next week as well. So enjoyed it this week, and we'll see you again back here.